In today's society, the internet is everywhere. And with the internet providing us with new perspectives from all the stimulation it provides, wouldn't it make sense that the internet might be impacting our perception in ways different than any generation before us? And if the internet is causing such effect, why is it happening? First of all, what is human perception? According to Webster Dictionary, perception is A, the awareness of a physical sensation in the environment, and B, the interpretation of these sensations into mental imagery and processing within the individual. So the question stands, with the creation of the internet, has our perception changed, and why? In order to correctly gauge whether or not the internet has changed our perception, we have to consider multiple factors. For instance, economic status, geographical location, gender, whether you were born with or without the internet, and of course age, all have to be taken into consideration. My hypothesis is, if the internet was in fact changing the human perception, and therefore altering the way humans interpret sensations around us, then we will see differences in perception in each stage of life caused by the internet in contrast to humans before the internet. Let's begin this analysis with the first stage of life, infancy. According to Encyclopedia Britannica, infants' sensory organs are fairly matured at birth. However, infants' individual sensory organs are at different levels of maturation. For example, infants possess functional sensory systems. Vision is somewhat organized, and audition, olfaction, and touch are fairly mature. However, infants lack perceptual knowledge, which must be gained through experience with the world around them. At birth, the infant's brain is quite overwhelmed by all the sensory stimulation coming from all the sensory organs. To be quite frank, infants can't perceive in the ways that we can due to their lack of experience handling all this stimulation. For this reason, factors like economic status, global location, and gender do not play a role in impacting the infant's perception. No matter where the infant is in the world, how wealthy his family is, or what gender the infant is, the child is not developed enough to have any implications on its perception due to these factors. According to Cohen and Oakes et al., a study which measured infants' attention and perception, infants tend to ignore objects that are the recipient of an action from an event. This means that while the infant might be interested in focusing his senses on an event, such as mom coming into the room and watching a video on her laptop, the infant would pay little to no attention in the video and focus entirely on mom. Furthermore, while the internet might have had specific colors and sounds that an infant from the 1900s might not have experienced, an infant from the 1900s had plenty of natural stimulation from the world around it. The next age group we're going to focus on is childhood. With developed sensory organs, child perception seems to deviate from the 1900s child when it comes to learning. According to the meta-analysis by the RCSI Cyberpsychology Research Center, children are deeply immersed into online technology from birth and are considered digital natives. Their research suggests that 14% of children watch 2 or more hours of media, 1/3 of children have TVs in their room, 25% of 3-year-olds go online daily, and 28% of 3 to 4-year-olds now use tablets. Furthermore, according to Roseberry 2013 et al., children tend to learn novel words in socially contingent situations. This means that apps like FaceTime can provide children with the stimulation they need to learn to perceive their sense of self. So with all the new internet-enabled technology children are exposed to, is their perception different from a child in the 1900s? The answer is a solid no. While kids are better able to learn and read through a screen, it does not mean that children have a change in their perception, and therefore a change in the way they process information. The internet acts as a tool in which children are allowed to receive multiple stimuli, like sound and sight and video, and process it more efficiently. While the internet has not changed the way children interpret and learn language, interactive online e-readers have proven to motivate children to read more. According to Scholastic Books, 26% of boys and 16% of girls read more when reading on an ebook. And according to the National Literacy Trust annual survey, children prefer to read through a screen 52.4% of the time, while only 32% prefer paperback books. Unfortunately, regardless of what century you were born in, or whether or not you were able to use the internet, factors like socioeconomic status, global location, and sometimes gender can impact the amount of education a child receives and ultimately their perception. The next group probably has had the most substantial impact from the internet: young adults, or millennials. With all the overwhelming support from all the pictures uploaded from all the millennials around the world, it's probably easy to suggest that the internet is changing a millennial's perception. And with evidence like Deal, Zuberman, and Barak's study, it's easy to suggest that this might be the case. Photo taken has been proven to enhance the intention you have in the event while taking the photo and therefore further engage you. Additionally, the internet creates large differences in perception when it comes to gender. As demonstrated in the 2009 study on Facebook use and college students' life satisfaction, trust, and participation, undergraduate Facebook users perceive their own life satisfaction and self-worth based on their Facebook friends, notifications, and likes. As a result of the internet and social media, many young adults are extremely influenced by their perceived likability as demonstrated by online activity. This can cause low self-esteem and body dysmorphia, especially for girls. However, with the unrealistic Photoshop pictures of people online, it is easy to understand how the internet could seem to make such an impact on young adult perception. Furthermore, as Science Daily demonstrated, people can only detect fake images 60% of the time. That means 40% of the time people believe photoshopped images are real people. However, it would be unwise to claim the internet has changed our perception. Throughout history, long before the creation of the internet, other mediums like paintings depicted unrealistic images of people that most likely had a similar effect to what photos on the internet do now. This painting is from 1895, and the same sexist motif is seen, creating body dissatisfaction and altering women's perception of themselves and their self-worth. Here, a motivational ad from Bill Jones made in the 1920s to 30s depicts the same attack at men's own perception of their manlyhood. Lastly, and unfortunately, socioeconomic status and geographical location still do play a part in young adults' perception. Again and unfortunately, regardless of whether you have the internet as your medium or not, depending on where you live and how much money a young adult family has, can extremely deteriorate or build one's self-perception based on what she/he is comparing themselves to. Next, we're going to talk about adults. The 2016 election is a great starting point to explain how the internet could have impacted adults' perception. Even though they have many more years of knowledge than any other age group discussed before this, the internet has demonstrated great examples of how adults can change their ideals into a false perception of the world through the internet. In 2016, we saw a rise and spread of the word
fake news
regarding to many scientific articles and information about presidential candidates. Ever since the creation of the internet, People have been saying you cannot trust everything you read on the internet. Back then, this was mostly true. The internet community had not reached a size big enough to fact check everything that was posted, and to most, it probably did not matter. Nowadays, popular and credited news outlets and companies release articles or news in which the public immediately accepts as fact. For instance, a Microsoft study on the attention span of Canadian adults claims that people now have a shorter attention span than goldfish. Not only is this information incorrect, but it is published on one of the most credible news outlets, the New York Times. So what's with all the
fake news?
And why are people falling for all the simple fallacies on all these articles and news outlets online? Is the internet impacting adult perception? Furthermore, the internet has also demonstrated differences in perception amongst individuals. Among more popular discussions was, what color is this dress? This picture had the internet enraged. People were arguing, is it white and gold, or blue and black, or somewhere in between? But why was the internet creating such differences in perception? According to James Pomerantz statements in an article from Science Daily, this phenomenon is rather elementary and can be explained easily. Pomerantz stated that, due to the small contrast in the lighting of the room, pictures can be perceived very differently by different viewers. Additionally, the reason why this difference in perception occurs has been figured out before the internet's creation. It is definitely not fair to say the internet is to blame. As you can see, before the invention of the internet, credible sources, like in this case, the US government, use the same fallacies as news outlets and scientific studies today to change your perception. In this case, the US government is trying to impact your perception of safety, causing you to consider enlisting in the army to keep you and your family safe. According to psychologist Richard Gregory, from his 1970 visual assumption theory, top-down processing, also known as conceptual-driven processing, happens when we form our perceptions from the big picture to the tiny details. We make the best guess of what we see based on our expectations, beliefs, prior knowledge, and past experiences. In other words, we make a calculated assumption. As seen in Sean Ting's article, Gregory's most famous examples is the Charlie Chaplin hollow mask effect. As you can see, as Charlie Chaplin mask was rotated, we were meant to perceive the nose as protruding, as that is what we're used to, and that is our expectation based on our knowledge of the world. However, the nose is not protruding, and that's our brain causing us to see such an illusion. Lastly, like all other ages except infancy, adults' perception can be altered by geographical and economic factors. An adult who could not afford the internet will be well behind on current information and access to social media, altering their perception of the world around them. And in a more extreme location, like North Korea, the internet can impact one's perception by providing propaganda made to change the way their citizens think. Finally, when it comes to adults, gender can play less of a role in how one perceives the world around them. By adulthood, individuals are very mentally complex and may align themselves anywhere along the gender spectrum. For this reason, it is unfair to claim that any one person might perceive things differently through the internet due to gender. As seen in the examples I illustrated, the internet is not changing people's perception, because humans are still thinking the same way they always have, even before the internet. Throughout time, people have used tools to make them process things more efficiently. Books, radios, and movies are all examples of tools that have aided in creating people's perceptions better by receiving and understanding what they are experiencing. While the internet has definitely aided in helping people understand what they are perceiving, the only way the internet has changed humanity's perception would be by broadening it. Before the internet, if you wanted to widen your perception, you could read a book that contains one author's belief and the limited amount of people in which the author agrees with and has decided to reference. Today, you can Google anything, like chemistry, and receive a world's worth of ideas that provide you with a worldly perspective that is far greater than any perspective one could gain from living in a small community in the 1900s or reading an old book. So while you might blame the internet for the jealous feelings you get when your high school friends Facebook post about their new job and raise, just remember the internet has broadened humanity's perspective more than any tool humanity has created today.